Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia and heir apparent, here he says that the Islamic Republic of Iran is no different to Nazi Germany. Powerful stuff, especially coming from Saudi Arabia. Have a watch at his words and then we'll unpack.
You've been rivals for centuries. At its heart, what is this rift about? Is it a battle for Islam?
Iran is not a rival to Saudi Arabia. Its army is not among the top 5 armies in the Muslim world. The Saudi economy is larger than the Iranian economy. Iran is far from being equal to Saudi Arabia.
But I've seen that you called the Ayatollah Khamenei the new Hitler of the Middle East.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he wants to expand. He wants to create his own project in the Middle East, very much like Hitler, who wanted to expand at the time. Many countries around the world and in Europe did not realize how dangerous Hitler was until what happened. I don't want to see the same events happening in the Middle East.
Does Saudi Arabia need nuclear weapons to counter Iran?
Saudi Arabia does not want to acquire any nuclear bomb. But without a doubt, if Iran developed a nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible.
So, two key things to unpack here. First of all, he's right that the Islamic Republic in Iran, what they want, what they're seeking is dominance, regional dominance, and beyond that, they are Islamic extremists. They want the annihilation of Israel. They want the annihilation of the Western order and America, and the death and destruction, and meanwhile the barbarism and terrorism that they celebrate. I'm not quite sure what the qualitative differences are between that kind of evil and the evil of Nazi Germany. They want to wipe out the Jewish people. They have no issue with that. And people say, oh, well, they've got some Jews living in Iran who are treated very poorly if they go out of line at all in terms of following the status quo in Iran or show any support for Israel and all those kind of things, which is the nation state, the historic, ancient, biblical, God-given land of the Jewish people. If they show any kind of expression of support for that, goodness me, they're in trouble. What if you're saying ultimately that you're against the Jewish people's right to self-determine in their ancient homeland, and you want to destroy it, and you're threatening nuclear bombs, you're threatening doing all kinds of terrorist acts in order to eliminate such state, which guarantees the self-determination and prospering and security of a people, you basically want to see the Jews annihilated, or at the very least subservient and certainly not equal to you. What they want is modern-day Nazi-esque. So that's point number one. But point number two, which is more interesting, this is coming from the leader of Saudi Arabia, one of the leaders of Saudi Arabia. This is remarkable, what we're seeing, a new alliance slowly forming. We saw it partly form in the aftermath of the Iranian rocket attack, where you had Jordan, a coalition of Arab countries and Western countries coming together to quell the Iranian attack. We're seeing something really interesting happening here, which is that unlikely partners of Israel are coming together. It's really remarkable, and it shows for me, among all the kind of political analysis that we can do, just aside from that, we can also see how we don't have to think that certain historic enemies, opponents, are going to necessarily be so in the future. When we look at people like Mossab Hassan Youssef, the son of a Hamas co-founder, raised in a region, in an area that spewed Jew hatred, or Loe al-Sharif, or Sohail Ahmed, all these people I've interviewed on JTV. And they've changed. They've come to become philo-Semitic, to want peace, to want to have healthy, good, positive relations with the Jewish people, with Israel, and with the entire world. And so for me, what gives me hope in seeing this is that actually people can change. And what was in the past might not necessarily be in the future. It's interesting, from a Jewish perspective, the way we anticipate the end of days, so to speak, and the the Messianic era, an era where we finally have peace in the world, where God's presence is finally prevalent everywhere, where there's an absolute standard of morality and justice and peace and equality. Some people assume that the way we get there is going to be through some kind of an all-out war where good survives and enemies of good and opponents and evil people, they're crushed, they die, and it's sort of going to be one over the other. But actually, the Jewish tradition tells us that what we're hoping for and expecting is actually that many people, rather than who are opponents and die, they actually change their ways and they see the truth and they recognize it. Because ultimately, what the Messianic era is meant to be about is meant to be something that's achieved by humanity, something that's achieved through grassroots efforts. If it's all done from above, then we haven't really achieved this era through our own achievement, through our own will, through our own understanding. So, for example, that's why God kept going to Moses and saying, tell Pharaoh to let them go. Why did he tell Moses to say that to Pharaoh? He could have just said, right, I'm going to freeze all the Egyptians because I can do anything, I'm God, and I'm going to send you all on your merry way to the promised land. He didn't do that. He wanted Pharaoh's participation. Of course, it didn't happen, but it showed us that was the ideal. That's what he wanted. You know, there was two significant moments that occurred in the 20th century that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the great rabbi of the Chabad movement, he reflected on. One was Israel's winning the Six-Day War, where she had Arab armies attacking her from all sides. And the second was the collapse of the Soviet Union, of communism, tyrannical communism. And for the Six-Day War, the Rebbe said, wow, that's a miracle. But for the collapse of the Soviet Union, he said, this is Moshiachtic, this is messianic. Why is one just a miracle and the other actually messianic in nature? If anything, Israel, being victorious against her enemies sounds very messianic. And the reason given that I heard is because in the case of Israel and the Six-Day War, it was good defeating bad. But in the case of the Soviet Union collapsing, the evil surrendered itself. And that's the key. See, what we're really expecting in the end times is that all human beings come to acknowledge the truth. Not that they die, but the false ideologies die. And they come to terms with reality. And that's what I think we're beginning to start to see here. So it's very interesting times. Things are changing. And I've always said it's very hard to actually predict what's happening around in every country. It's, people think, oh, it's going to go this way, it's going to go that way. It's hard to know. Many different ways things could go. And what is clear from this is that so much of it rests on our own choices. We do have a lot of agency. And people can surprise us. Human beings can surprise us. And I expect over the coming days, weeks, months and years, we're going to be in for all kinds of surprises.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.